Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes down to policing and the Black community, all we do is get lip service from politicians. None of them are willing to put themselves on the line to put real policies in place that would protect the Black community. Many of them see how unfair it is in policing, and still they stand on the sidelines and talk about it politically, but they don't go any further than that. And we heard Bernie Sanders, according to him, if you don't want to get shot in the back of the head, you go along with the lying, cheating, murderous cop. You respect the corrupt cop. That's Bernie Sanders' advice. Instead of him being a policymaker, sitting his ass down and putting something in concrete to stop all of the injustices that's going on in policing. Instead of doing that, he wants to tell you if you don't want to get shot in the back of the head, you respect corruption. That's pretty much what he said. And this is NPR. And it's a story that came out on the 9th of November 2019. And Pete Buttigieg is a mayor. And if you remember a few months ago, there was an unarmed Black man, non-threatening to a cop, that was killed. And his city was in an uproar about this shooting. And I watched the town hall that he was in, and he did really bad. He didn't do well with those, and it was some white people there also speaking against what the police did, but he didn't do well with that crowd at all. He didn't. We don't need any more talking about all of the injustice that is going on in policing. We need these politicians and the people that write laws in this country to do something. If all you're going to do is give us lip service and nothing happens beyond that, then technically you're wasting our time. Black people want to see action. We want to see action because our lives are on the line. So just talking about these issues that's just not good enough. It's not cutting it. And it's unacceptable for all of you politicians from Congress, the Senate, and even local politicians to see what's happening, and you have blatantly ignored it. It's unacceptable. You are in a position to do something, unlike many of us out here. But see, when somebody rise up like Gavin Long or Micah Johnson, then you want to bitch and complain and moan about that too. You can't have it both ways. And that's what you're trying to do. A national challenge, Pete Buttigieg, on racial. Wow. I am sick of these stories. Boy, I'm sick of these stories, y'all. I am. I am sick of these stories, and I'm sick and tired of seeing our people being mowed down by these unruly cops that America has raised up in this country. I'm sick of the whole thing. All right, let's get into this.
Relationships between police and the communities they serve are strained in many parts of the country. Michael Logan, a retired Michigan State police sergeant, says,
one of the things that I saw almost immediately in my career early in law enforcement, and especially now, was the need for law enforcement to actively engage with the underrepresented community.
Mr. Logan's one of the voters who sat down with us this week at Peg's Diner in South Bend, Indiana, to talk with Mayor Pete Buttigieg for our Off-Script series, where we bring presidential candidates and undecided voters together at the same table. Mayor Buttigieg has been criticized by some black residents of South Bend for not doing more about the issue, but he told Michael Logan he has a plan.
Police legitimacy and these relationships are important, I think, not only from the perspective of racial justice, but from the perspective of public safety itself. What can we do about it? Well, one thing we know is we can promote programs that encourage that kind of relationship that officers uniquely are able to build in communities of color and on the ground. I always like to say that officers do best when they have the mentality almost of somebody like a candidate for city council. In other words, wanting to walk the neighborhood, build relationships, be viewed as a community problem solver. And we can do everything from citizens police academies. We got one of those that encourages just residents to schedule classes to learn about how law enforcement works, to programs that get officers working with kids in athletic leagues and those kinds of things, so that early in life there are those mentoring relationships. We also, of course, need to make sure that we have more diverse officers on the department, which frankly has become harder, I think, since Ferguson. We're finding it harder and harder to find, in particular, young black men who can picture themselves in uniform. And so anything that
this department has been criticized for that under your stewardship.
Yeah, we've had a real struggle with that during my time as mayor, and it's happening in South Bend, but not only South Bend. It's really a national challenge.
Former sergeant, how does that strike you? Is this the kind of stuff you've heard from public officials before, or is there a nugget of something else there?
You know, Mr. Mayor, I think that's a great idea, but I honestly am curious as how that's sustainable, because you've seen programs over the year, whether it's DARE, keep kids off, say no to drugs. All of those are very short-term solutions, and they're slogan-based. But in terms of the communities of color, there has to be a true cultural shift. I think that there's a way to do that, but it has to be continuous and it has to be sustained. And you won't see the results of that for 6 or 7 years. How do you address that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think it's worth investing federal dollars in this, even if it's expensive. So that gets to who pays for it. But I also really agree that we're talking about deep, interwoven cultural issues here. And sometimes these issues are laid at the feet of law enforcement. Really, it's about a lot of different things. It's about everything from economic empowerment to education. A lot of times it's also about whether we are responding to mental health and disability issues in the right way, because we've seen a lot of racial disparity in that. So I don't want all of this to be kind of pinned on the law enforcement side of the house, but it is clear that there's a lot more we can do. And I also think this is why it would be a good idea to have a national police academy in the same way that we have a West Point for the Army or a Annapolis for the Navy, that really builds out what the future of policing is going to look like, and trains people not just in sort of tactics, but in these kind of cultural questions.
How does that strike you?
I think that's a great idea. But again, the question is always going to be, and I know you can't answer this right now, Mr. Mayor, how it's funded, because honestly, most people, unless they're directly affected by what's going on, sort of the mentality of, well, what happens of the south side of South Bend, it doesn't affect me, so why should I really care?
And Mr. Mayor, people don't say, "Oh yeah, please let me pay more taxes." I would welcome the opportunity to pay for a national police academy.
Yeah, but here's the thing: we need to do some of this work, and as a country, I think over my lifetime, we have seen the consequences of disinvesting, taking money out of education, out of infrastructure, out of health, and mostly using it not to spend on other priorities, with the exception of wars, some of which could have been avoided. But a lot of it was spent just to cut taxes, and it was to cut taxes on the wealthiest, who needed it the least. Look, things cost money. You can't get something for nothing, but there's a way to do this without going back to the tax levels we saw in the 60s in the U.S. But it is going to require asking some to do more, and we can't expect to thrive or to grow in safety and health, in education, in any of the things that make America successful and competitive, if we're not willing to gather that revenue and put it to good use.
Pete Buttigieg in conversation with retired police detective Sergeant Michael Logan And you can watch our whole conversation at npr.org/offscript.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Ladies
and gentlemen, we know all about law enforcement and how it's been infiltrated with white supremacist groups and stuff, and they have this information. And if they have this information, they have information on who these people are. They haven't done nothing to weed them out. Nothing. Nothing. But just tell us they are aware. Again, there's nothing but lip service when it comes down to making laws and putting things in place so that these cops can't act so fast in shooting unarmed people. So until these politicians get to that point, I can't really listen to them or even respect anything that they're saying. We've waited for so long. These cops act just the way they did when they were plantation police officers. There is no difference. We're just in a different era. The attitude is all the same. When they come in the Black community or come around us, they don't have to respect anything. They don't even have to see you as human. And this stuff continues to go on. So I can't respect politicians until somebody steps up to the plate, make these laws, and make sure they are enforced. Until then, I have no respect for anybody on the left or right at all. Please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.